Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Great to have you as always. I really can't explain how enjoyable doing these podcasts actually has been. To be able to go and think critically over some of the issues that we've been going over the last several months and talking with such marvelous people about their journeys and how they lead towards greater alignment to mission and vision has really helped me develop as a leader, as an alignment consultant. It's been absolutely marvelous. And thank you for all the feedback that you've had. I've been getting some really interesting information from folks talking about how the information's really helping them think about things a bit differently, which that catalyst is really what I'm keen about. I don't always have to be right or have the greatest insights for you, but if I can catalyze some things in your head about how things work in your organization that might help you become a little bit better or your organization a little bit better, that makes me feel really great. Now today, as I mentioned last week, I'd like to get into a little bit more on the NCAA tournament. This time on the women's side. As a regular listener, if you happen to be, you know that the last podcast of every month, we get into looking at some different social issues that are happening around our world and look to be able to go and connect them with mission and vision and how greater alignment can go and help put some perspective on some of the social issues that we have going on in our society. And today, I'd like to talk about what's been in the news around the women's tournament and the disparities between what has been offered to the men on that side of the tournament versus the women. There is a social media post put out by one of the participants in the tournament that initially outlined the differences between the weight rooms for the women versus the men, and calling out that inequity between men and women. That showed itself further in other posts about the different types of food availability there was between the men and the women, as well as some of the perks, giveaways that were provided to the men versus the women. Obviously, the women getting much less regard in those three particular areas. And in terms of the first one, the player went and videoed what the weights were that were available in the hotel for the women's players. And it was a single rack of dumbbells. And then it panned through the men's side, and there was vast, probably 5,000 square feet, I could be off, of weights for the men. And this takes me back, quite honestly, to 40 years ago, when I was playing high school basketball in Minnesota. I remember that in Iowa, the girl high school teams played 6-on-6, not the traditional 5-on-5 that you're generally aware of, but 6-on-6 basketball. But it was even more different than that. There were 3 of the girls that would play offense and 3 of the girls that would play defense. They could not cross the center line. The reasoning behind this was because it was felt that the girls, females, were not able to physically withstand going up and down full court. And that was actually a capitulation from previous decades where girls and women weren't even allowed to play basketball in most states because of feeling that such physical exertion was not possible in females because they had weaker hearts and weaker systems. But let's take a look at these NCAA tournament players on the female side. They have gone through COVID. They have prepared themselves physically and mentally to the same extent that their male counterparts have. And they do this while trying to study in their major and develop themselves as young women, just like the men. But yet, when it comes down to it, the need for staying physically strong over the course of the NCAA tournament, they didn't need any more than one rack of dumbbells. Now, with the COVID protocols, every team is sitting in the San Antonio area for the women, Indianapolis for the men. It is different than the way it has been in previous years. On the women's side, the first couple rounds of the tournament are played at local universities to be able to get more fans in the stands and make a little bit more money. So there are generally facilities available at those locations in previous years. So it was a new issue for the NCAA to be able to go and address. However, when you look at it from an alignment to mission and vision perspective, that the NCAA wants to be able to go and support college athletes, student athletes, and provide for an experience that is an enhancement to the educational experience, and demonstrate to those younger, both boys and girls, of what strong college athletes are presented to them. What makes anybody think that one rack of dumbbells would be appropriate for the greatest basketball athletes in college on the women's side? That comes from the top. Coordination in this particular area of COVID to sit there and say, what do these teams need? They need practice space. Over the course of time, they're going to need weight facilities. They're going to need food to be able to go empower them to be able to go and perform at their best. The men's side had huge spreads. The women had pre-packaged meals that were not set for nutritional requirements that they need as elite athletes. However, we see this everywhere so unfortunately. The lack of alignment, the belief that women are less capable to be able to go and drive performance in an organization has been going on for decades and even centuries. But the institutional structures of our organizations pay women less. Even if they go and perform better, we've seen the U.S. women's national team in the soccer realm win multiple World Cups, Olympic titles, destroying everybody in their path. Yet, have the U.S. Soccer Federation overtly diminish them in a statement in response to a lawsuit brought by the women that they're less capable, they're less worthy to be able to go and get equal and even equitable pay, given the type of performance that they've provided themselves and the inspirations that they've been to young girls, not only in the U.S., but worldwide, to be able to grow the game. Those are your greatest ambassadors in the U.S. Soccer Federation, whose mission is to be able to spread the game of soccer, outwardly minimize the women. Traditionally, we've known that women make, and it's been getting better, 70 cents on the dollar for the comparable male. They've started to be able to get board seats in companies and organizations in greater diversity. So they're in a bit more leadership positions. But they have to act differently. If they present themselves honestly, that may be more male-oriented, they're seen as being standoffish, incompatible with the culture. It's not their place, so they lose out on things if they go and express themselves in the competitive spirit, the vocal spirit, the strong spirit that they have. In fact, this reminds me of an example of someone who I used to work with. She was a finance manager in one of my previous lives, supporting the group that I led. And she came to me one day, and I'm not going to mention the organization or even this person's name. I want to keep some anonymity. But she came to me asking me if I thought that she was standoffish. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this person. She is strong. She is smart as hell. And she's one of those finance people that you go and say, she knows more than running just a report and giving me data. She understands my business. She's asking me the right questions, challenging me to see things differently. But when she challenged other leaders in the company, she was getting feedback that her confidence and strength was seen as standoffish because she was a woman. A man do that, he's seen as aggressive, forthright, determined, insightful, knows what he wants. I had the pleasure of reconnecting with this person recently. She is an officer at a very large retailer here in the U.S. Finding the right organization that cares about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and seeing the strength and capabilities in this person. And she rose up through the ranks. And within 10 years, she's become an officer in that company. I told her I saw it in her, and I couldn't be more proud to see that she found a spot where her capabilities were not only appreciated, but celebrated and put into great use for the betterment of the organization and its mission. So I'd like to pose a couple of questions to you. How your organization aligns itself to be able to go and bring forth greater gender inclusion and equity. I think, except for maybe the leadership side, there's generally going to be diversity. The number of women in organizations is pretty comparable. But are they in the leadership positions? Are they getting paid equitably for the same work? Are they being perceived in certain ways based on them being their authentic selves? Confident, competitive, with a drive to succeed and do well and speak their mind. How do you as a leader, and how does your organization in general talk about women when it comes to leadership positions, in terms of how you go and label them when they do certain things the same way that men would? Is there a difference? Are you actively mentoring, supporting, not only the men, but the women in ways that are appropriate for them. Because even though we want the equity and the equality, there are differences. There's going to be different goals, different drives. But given the same situations, are you going supporting your male and your female employees in the right ways? Developing them to be able to go and help drive the mission and vision. In this time of COVID and virtual work environments, have you seen noticeable differences in retention between males and females? Studies have shown that there's a lot more females that have left the workforce because of COVID, because they aren't getting paid enough, because they aren't appreciated the same way, and that their families, given all those other criteria, are much more important. Are you losing the great females because you're not taking care of them? What are the implications for your organization if that's happening? Like I mentioned, things have gotten better since the 50s and 60s and even 80s, when there's 3 players on each side of the court in Iowa. It's a lot better in athletics. It's a lot better in our organizations, but it's still not right. We are not serving our mission and vision when we look to minimize and subjugate any quality individual because of their gender, their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, anything that is artificial like that, that has little to no impact on whether they can do the job and do it well and bring value in fulfillment of the mission and vision. We're losing so much potential because of what essentially, quite honestly, right, it's fear. Male fear. Have you noticed fear within you? That's a third question. How do you manage it? How do you individually look to put yourself in the position, the mindset of the individual in front of you, whatever difference they happen to have, and try to meet them where they're at? Understand them. Paint the picture together. We have a long way to go. But leaders like you that are interested in this type of content are open to having that conversation with yourselves and with others to be able to help accelerate the pace. Hold people accountable when they happen to miss the bar. You don't have to berate them, but hold gender equity as well as racial and religious equity high up and strive to be able to go and reach higher than that bar. Hold yourself up there and help bring others up there. It's a little bit of a ramble. I apologize for that. But this brings out a lot of emotions in a lot of people. And when we can look at it from the lens of alignment to mission and vision, and the potentials and the possibilities from all these different employees, whether they be male or female, and looking how to be able to go maximize the human potential. Organizations that do that are going to be going skyrocketing forward. Enjoy the rest of your week. I really appreciate you going and tuning in. I'll see you soon. Cheers.